Our traveler's sibling has been mired in a great many mysteries since Genshin Impact's introduction over 2 years ago. Trailers such as We Will Be Reunited show us Lumine's clear intent to wage war with the thrones of Celestia. And following Aether's descent into the chasm, we learned she believes Conria to have been her home. Recent developments take it one step further by explaining that our traveler's sibling is recorded in the ages of Teyvat upon the ley lines as one who is native to Teyvat, a stark contrast to our own traveler, whose only historical mention is that of a descender, along with the sustainer of heavenly principles, a status that impossibly excludes our sibling. In this video, I'm going to show why I have now reaffirmed my previous belief that the Gnostic chorus is a lie, and despite being told otherwise, why our sibling almost certainly is one of the two unknown descenders, and why her fate has been interwoven very meticulously into the history of Teyvat. The latest Archon quest, Akasha Pulses, the Kalpa Flame Rises, was among one of the very most critical we've experienced from a lore perspective. The conclusion permanently changed historical elements in an unprecedented and unexpected way. First and foremost, we need to establish the reason for those changes. By sacrificing herself to purge the forbidden knowledge, Greater Lord Rukkhadevata now effectively never existed within the historical memory of the ley lines, which passed down through all of Teyvat's people, as well as all written text and historical documents. May the world completely forget me. Indeed. It is because of this, the people now believe that Nahida was always the Dendro Archon, and that she simply lost her memories in defense of Sumeru during the Cataclysm. And so, the Sub-Zeru's festival became simply the birthday of the Dendro Archon, with no mention of Rukkhadevata at all. In fact, Nahida's own ascension material, the Kalpalata Lotus, now no longer credits Rukkhadevata, nor Kusanali, for its initial creation, thus robbing the former's legacy of having created the flower, which gave rise to all other flora in Sumeru. The description still uses the word created, but now intentionally leaves its creator ambiguous. There are, without a doubt, a good number of other changes to the world's lore following the erasure of Rukkhadevata from Irminsul, such as the description of the gadget, the Boon of the Elder Tree, which now no longer explains that a known labyrinth disappeared following the death of Rukkhadevata and the Lord of the Forest. Instead, it now simply states that it disappeared, with no relevant data given to place its time or circumstances whatsoever. Even the voiceover dialogue between Paimon and the Traveler, titled About Believes, was entirely removed, because Paimon doesn't remember anything about Rukkhadevata, and leaving it would make this fact somewhat uncertain. So why does any of this matter? It's because the action which erased Rukkhadevata was the ultimate MacGuffin, the removal of her branch from Irminsul. This caused the tree and its roots, the ley lines, which have been shown on several occasions, to record the memories of the past, to forget her entirely. Almost immediately after this played out, my thoughts broke from the moment to consider, what if this is a two-way street? It's a thought that sent me tumbling headfirst down a rabbit hole of potential explanations to some of Aether and Lumine's biggest mysteries, beginning with this idea. If one with enough power can remove a branch from the tree, how much power would one need to add a branch? And what if that branch contained a false narrative? Would it still change every book, every historical document, and every person in Teyvat? Well, to address that, we saw that the removal of Ruka's branch did not change the traveler's memories of the original Dendro Archon, a fact which was attributed to the traveler not originating from Teyvat. If this is to be taken at face value, then it's reasonable to assess that the sibling should not be susceptible to changes made to Irminsul. Unless she is indeed from Teyvat somehow. Would that exception granting immunity still hold true if a new branch intentionally imprinted a terrestrial identity upon her? Would the addition of that branch cause the ley lines to no longer recognize her as a known descender? Reaching into her mind, would it rearrange her memories of the past and implant the identity of the princess upon her? Would it alter her fate and bind her to a quest to engulf the thrones of Celestia? And that raises another question then. How would she still know her brother? To address that, we saw following Ruka's sacrifice that Nahida still felt the grief of loss, though she did not know why, making it seem as if not all traces of the past experiences are totally rewritten, but just those needed to remove the subject in question. And so Lumine's familial recognition of Aether may be explained in a similar fashion. Perhaps even because Aether as a descender was not part of Teyvat, it could not erase him from her memories at all, leaving her former life buried beneath a confusing veil of shadow, like a tree shaded in chokevine, struggling to absorb the light through the darkness. This line of reasoning regarding manipulations of Irminsul is not where my theory ends. Current history records 4 descenders and identifies only 2 of them. Given that our story begins with both Aether and Lumine encountering who Nahida guessed to be the first recorded descender, it should be impossible that Lumine was not attributed to that role, unless her status in that role, as well as the status of the other descender in question, was erased by the addition of the same branch which set Lumine on her path to war with destiny. Which brings me at last to the Gnostic Chorus. Back in February of 2021, I released a 2-part video detailing the idea that I believed the Gnostic Chorus is a lie, and was actually telling the tale of 2 other Outlanders who came to Teyvat before our own pair of travelers. While some ideas from that theory were a little out there, the core idea remains unspoiled after 2 years. That is to say, that the tale may not be about Aether and Lumine, and I related it to who I believed at the time to be the sustainer of heavenly principles, and Dainsleif. Fast forward to a few weeks ago, Nahida ventures an educated guess that one of Teyvat's 4 known Outlander visitors, known as Descenders, was who she called heavenly principles. If this is taken to be the same heavenly principles that we encountered in the game's opening scene, and indeed we really have no reason to think otherwise, then explanations for mysteries outlined in the chorus become somewhat more tangible. If the Gnostic Chorus was about the first 2 descenders, as I theorized almost 2 years ago, with the first being heavenly principles, in line with Nahida's educated guess, and the second being Dainsleif, a certain clarity is gained. What I mean is, the Gnostic Chorus, at least as we were shown, is a lie, but also, it's not. What we saw may have simply been a previous cycle, reflective of Teyvat's mysterious cyclical nature: birth, death, and rebirth. Civilizations rise and fall, and new civilizations grow to replace them. With little context at the time, we may have been intentionally left to assume that the chorus story belonged to Aether and Lumine. Through this interpretation, Dane and the one only known as heavenly principles trudged their own paths through Teyvat, and perhaps like our travelers they could even be siblings. Then the first was in some way deceived, transforming her into what we saw, while the second is still on his journey. But he too has become something more. An often unreferenced title belonging to Dane is that of the Bowkeeper. This title was provided to us along with his original promotional materials. This title could be referenced to his status as a keeper of Irminsul, or, more likely, the keeper of a particular bough or branch from the tree. This, as an idea, is strengthened when inspecting Dainsleif's appearance. The so-called corruption on his body is somewhat like the corruption which infested Inazuma's ley lines during Imperatrix Umbrosa, Transient Dreams, a storyline which all but confirms that branches can be added, as we witnessed A plant the seed of the sacred Sakura in the past, rewriting history such that everyone other than A always recognized the tree's existence, while A, by contrast, recognized it suddenly appeared as a fully grown tree, not understanding why until she planted the seed herself as many as 1,000 years later. If the connection of Dane's title and visual corruption is intentional, it could suggest that as the Bowkeeper, he has become melded with some part of Irminsul itself, and it's a canon reason for him to be the voice narrator of the Collected Miscellany series, because he knows what the Leylines know. In fact, he knows them better than he knows his own past. I say this because of the manipulation of the branches. If he's written himself into Teyvat's history, or become part of Irminsul itself, like Lumine, these actions may alter his perception, confusing his own recollection of past events as well. To quote one of Dane's most ironically memorable lines, "My memory has all but faded completely, but I will always remember how much she, too, loved these flowers." If you've made it this far into the video, then you might be asking, if Dane is the keeper of Irminsul in some way, why would he not have gotten involved in the recent events in Sumeru where Aether and the Three Magi saved Irminsul? Well, that is of course assuming that Dane didn't already know the outcome, making his presence unnecessary, further implicating that our past and future encounters with Dane are not merely happenstance. He's shown up at the perfect time on several occasions now, because he's attempting to nudge our traveler towards a specific goal, to end the repeating cycles of Teyvat. Allow me a moment to highlight a few suspicious yet unexplained similarities. Descenders 1 and 2, crowned heirs from the Gnostic chorus. One may be heavenly principles, and the other unknown. Of them, heavenly principles came first. Searching for the Genesis Pearl, she was deceived under unknown circumstances and transformed into a powerful godlike being, a queen of a kingdom of darkness. Later, the second came and began their own journey to find the pearl, and discovered that the first heir has become something different. Ages pass and fates cross over. We have the arrival of Descenders 3 and 4. The first of the two came at a time which is yet unknown. Our own traveler is not sure how long a time passed between arriving in Teyvat and being awoken by his sibling within the rock prior to their attempt to flee the war-torn lands. Like Descenders 1 and 2, one is unknown, and one is our traveler. Like in the chorus, the sibling came first. For an unknown period of time, she was active, and what she did in that time is unknown. Briefly reunited, Lumine is noted by Aether to have worn flowers known as Intevats in her hair for the first time. Not simply a throwaway detail to forget. These now supposedly rare or extinct flowers exist as really the only clue we have that Lumine was in some way involved in whatever was going on in Teyvat prior to awakening Aether. The two become separated upon encountering heavenly principles, with Lumine arriving in Conria as it fell, or so says history anyways. Eventually, she becomes the princess of the Abyssal Order, with the desire to engulf the thrones. The fourth descender, Aether, awakens 500 years later to start his own journey through Teyvat, looking for answers about his sibling, and finding that she has become something else. The cycles are admittedly not identical, but have eerily similar narrative tentpoles, such that it's hard to ignore the indicators that Aether and Lumine were just an inevitable echo, pawns in a war that began long before their arrival. As Dane puts it, a continuation of past battles. But that's where this all comes to a tidy conclusion, as we can, through the lens of this theory, bring context to Dane's final words in the trailer, Travail. He says, "Some say a few are chosen and the rest are dregs. But I say we humans have our humanity. We will defy this world with a power from beyond." Here, this idea establishes that Dane disagrees with the sentiment that those who are not chosen are dregs, as he intends to fulfill his quest, defy fate, with a power from beyond. He says this to show that he was not chosen for this path, but has set himself upon the path to defy fate, a suspiciously similar path to Lumine's war with destiny. Dane goes on to say, "Step forth, if you have understood the meaning of your journey. Defeat me, command me to step aside. Show me that you are worthier than I to rescue her. Then the threads of all fate will be yours to reweave." In what is likely to be the Trounce domain to end all Trounce domains, Dane challenges the Traveler to defeat him, save your sibling, and reweave the threads of fate. The use of the word reweave suggests that Dane's influence upon us up until that point were to bring us to this crossroad. He wants us to defeat him. He openly invites it. In the previous cycle, he has gained much power, but now he needs the Traveler to be powerful enough to put an end to the cycles, for it is Dane who has woven Lumine into the very roots of Teyvat, transforming her into something she is not. She has her role to play in Dane's game of destiny, and perhaps that is why she does not trust him. Like Nahida's residual sadness after erasing Ruka Teyvata, the current cycle's Gnostic chorus deception, which Lumine experienced, was Dane befriending her and nudging her on a path until she was able to gain a power which allowed him to add her branch to Irminsul, setting her on a path to becoming a weapon against the thrones. Her sense of distrust for Dane is likely a residual feeling from her realization that she had been deceived prior to his successful implantation of her branch upon Irminsul. Though remorseful in his actions, Lumine is a monster of his creation. Her arrival, a fortunate opportunity allowing him to interrupt the cycle, creating a new second coming of heavenly principles that will face off against the first Descender. Lumine is the power from another world that will defy the heavenly principles. So like I said at the start, Lumine must be a Descender. We as players witnessed her attempt to leave Teyvat with her sibling, and similarly, the sustainer of heavenly principles recognized and proclaimed both Ether and Lumine as outlanders in that same scene. But in the time since then, Lumine's identity was rewritten, erasing her status as a Descender and allowing one who manipulates the threads of fate to push her along the same path that gave rise to the heavenly principles. From behind a veil of shadow, created from his own lost or erased status as a Descender, Dane may knowingly have initiated a repeat of the cycle, but this time with an advantage Celestia cannot predict. When it's all over and Celestia has fallen, Ether can use Dane's power to reweave Lumine's fate by removing the branch to restore her former self and ending the cycle of Celestia's rule by heavenly principles. And there we have it. If the key concept of this theory is true, the idea that if branches can be removed from Irminsul, they can too be added, then Lumine is a Descender, or rather, she was, but no longer is she in the veins of Irminsul. And the Gnostic chorus is a lie, but it also isn't, as both cycles have yet to be concluded. Our Traveler and the Sibling are but marionettes manipulated unseen by Dane, as Teyvat barrels headlong into its final tumult, with Lumine at the tip of his spear, and she doesn't even know it. What do you think? Do you agree that Dane and Lumine are unknown Descenders, and that our Sibling is a weapon from another world he intends to use to defy the gods? If this video sparked something in you, whether you agree or not, let me know in the comments below. Leave a like and subscribe to support the channel. And if you really want to help support the channel, please stick around for a moment to check out this video's sponsor. From the creator of Genshin Tarot, Brother Ming Games, comes the brand new original anime board game, React: The Arts of War. React: The Arts of War is a 1 versus 1 card dueling tactics game that combines Yu-Gi-Oh's chain links with Magic the Gathering's creature tapping, and throws both concepts onto a chess grid topped off with over 3 years of meticulous tinkering, testing, and streamlining. There are 8 characters you can play as: a calligrapher, whose written words irresistibly compel their reader to action; a water dancer, who summons giant flying fish in the wake of their gracefully calculated steps; or as a fortune teller, so talented in the art of prediction and misdirection, she can dramatically alter the fate of those who earn her admiration or aversion. React: The Arts of War is creative, gorgeous, and surprisingly deep. If you are a fan of anime card games, this is not one to miss. With no randomized booster packs, you get the entire game with all 8 characters for $60. The Kickstarter campaign began on November 29th and will run through December 28th, 2022. Check out the link in the description below and help make React: The Arts of War a reality.